We have to question, though, India's macroeconomic outlook and whether it is really as sound as 6.2, 6.5% suggests headline growth when you consider relatively subdued Q1 corporate earnings, June quarter passenger vehicle and two-wheeler sales, which are a bellwether of the economy. They fell and broke a 4-year growth streak. All does not seem well in India's economy, Sakshi. Would you agree? And is 6.2, 6.5% headline growth necessarily at risk?
Right. I mean, look, I think the way you have to kind of parse through India data, and, we've been tracking a lot of high frequency indicators, including what you just mentioned. I think the India growth story at the moment is very, very mixed, right? So, on the one hand, as I said, you have support coming in from, government expenditure. You have the infrastructure segment or the capital goods segment that seems to be doing a little bit better. But at the same time, if you look at consumption growth, there the evidence seems to be very, very mixed. So especially indicators like passenger vehicle sales that are an indicator of urban demand, things seem to have continued to slow down or remain very weak over the last couple of quarters. This is a trend that we have been seeing since last year. And on top of that, if you add, what's been happening to the formal job market, where hiring intentions, in part because of what's happening on the global side in terms of uncertainty on trade, etc. We are still awaiting to see a meaningful pickup there. So again, the consumption story is much more moderate compared to the infrastructure piece that we are seeing that still continues to show momentum. So it's very, very mixed at this stage at the aggregate level.
Yes. So can I pick up on that, on one of those points that you raised, Sakshi, and that is job creation. Earlier this week, we heard from TCS cutting 12,000 jobs. Is that industry AI-related displacement, or do you think that there was a fundamental reason as to why that was happening?
I think in the tech space in general over the last couple of years, right, we have seen globally as well as in India that there's been some moderation, in part because initially everybody was very optimistic. I think you expanded capacity, but then there's this normalization from that peak that is happening. But coupled with that, I definitely agree with what you're saying, that this, gradual move towards AI, of course, is a risk that we kind of need to now think about, especially for an economy like India, where, job creation is very, very important in the service sector. Third, I think there's of course this sense that the service sector in India is very closely linked to how the global economy performs, right? And we've been tracking data on the global side, and there is this general sense that with all these tariffs and uncertainty, of course, there is some amount of slowdown that is happening.
And let's pick up on that. The finance ministry seems to be cautious, if not managing expectations about trade developments and trade growth, given exactly what you referenced there, the global slowdown and tariff uncertainty. How much is riding, Sakshi, on a US-India trade deal?
Well, look, at this stage, I think a US-India trade deal is, of course, very, very important. US is a very important trading partner for India. We have exposures in a number of sectors that are labor intensive in nature. For instance, textiles, auto. So I think that getting, a deal signed with the US, of course, from a macroeconomic outlook perspective, not just in the near term, but over the medium term, is very essential. Over the last couple of weeks, we have seen some, stalling, in terms of the trade, talks. There are, of course, some issues around, for instance, agriculture, dairy, that are, I think, currently being discussed, and there hasn't been, final agreement there. But from a macro perspective, I think US is a very important trading partner and a market, not just on the goods, but also on the services, export piece for India.
Do you fear, though, it's going to be next to impossible for India to agree to a substantial reduction on tariffs for US agriculture and dairy products, which are red lines as far as India is concerned? You and I know that, and have been historically in trade negotiations. And if so, is there a non-trivial risk, Sakshi, that a full and final deal won't be ready by the end of the year?
Well, it is, difficult to kind of make conjectures around what, will be the final shape and form of the deal. I do believe that, there is intent in kind of getting through and coming out with a deal with the US. So, over the coming weeks or months, I think before the end of 2025, of course, we should have a deal with the US. These are, difficult issues domestically, both the sectors that you kind of mentioned. But I do believe that there will be, like we've seen, with the EU or with the Japan, trade deal that has come out, I think there will be some amount of give and take. And we are hopeful that ultimately we will kind of, get a trade deal with the US, given, as I said, that US is a very important trading partner for India.
Sakshi, where does all of this leave the RBI and its next move? I gather that their next decision is going to be on August the 6th. Given that they have done so much in the way of liquidity injections and front-loading of rate cuts, how much pressure is there on them to do more?
Well, look, I think that the upcoming August policy, I don't think that the RBI is going to cut the policy rate further. As you said, they've already front-loaded, 100 basis points of rate cuts this year. I think that the RBI would want to wait, for that to kind of play out and see through the system and economic activity. They've provided enough liquidity support. Recently, the lower inflation prints in India, have kind of opened up room for further monetary easing. However, I think at this stage, the RBI is likely to remain pat because, they have to be kind of forward-looking, right? And next year, from January onwards, we do see that inflation in India is going to start inching up. So at this stage, I think they'll be on a wait-and-watch mode. I think growth, as I highlighted before, we are not seeing a considerable slowdown at this stage, right? The story is very, very mixed. And a lot of the front-loading of, government expenditure, plus the tax cuts that were initially announced in the budget and the interest rate cuts, I think the RBI would want to wait and see how that plays out before looking at, further rate cuts down this year if required.